Volume 11 of Sword Princess, the side story, really picks up very heavily from Volume 10. And this definitely is going to have a lot of spoilers for those that have watched Season 3 of the anime itself and have only focused on the main story. There's some major stuff that happens in this volume that basically happens pretty much right after Season 3, which is, of course, to do with the Xenos working with the Loki familiars. People aren't particularly happy about working with the Xenos, but some people are okay with it. And then there's kind of the ramifications, of course, from, for those that know, Season 3 of DanMachi, but of course with Bell working with the Xenos, protecting the Xenos, and the whole thing that happened with that. And then, of course, Eyes dealing with that mental dilemma as well. The one thing that's really kind of got me interested is, again, Eyes has basically become more like Bell now than ever before, because she is now more determined to try and, in a sense, keep ahead of Bell, more determined to train harder and be stronger because Bell is catching up. She's definitely inspired by Bell. It's not a matter of her trying to catch up to Bell, but more she is trying to catch up to his mindset when it comes to how determined and driven he is to train and grow. She wants that same dedication and motivation. She wants to catch up to that mindset. So she's gone to someone that she wouldn't normally go to get training, which of course is the Freya familiar, and getting training from Otter. Of course, Otter is much stronger. That is the best person to go to someone that is much stronger. He decides to do that. Freya says at some point she's going to call upon a favor as repayment for allowing her to train with Otter. And honestly, I have a lot of theories behind this, now knowing what happens in the latest volume of DanMachi, which I won't spoil, but there's some interesting stuff that happens in the much later on volumes of the main DanMachi series that's not even released in the West, that I've kind of had a little bit of sneak peek at. And I feel like this volume is going to end up having a rippling effect, particularly that deal is going to have a massive effect on her later on when things transpire. And I think we're definitely going to see a lot more of that. And I'm interested to see how the author plays that out. Because when you look at the main story with Bell, his familiar members, he's always in the dungeon. He's always in the city. With this particular volume series, they adventure outside of the city as well. And even though this volume does focus inside the city, I like the change of pace where it comes to Eyes training with Otter. That one just really gets me quite interested at what's going on. Hestia and her familiar members are going on the exposition because they've got a lot of high-level members now. They have to go on expositions as part of the requirement, of course, from the guild itself. You've got the attack on the actual dungeon itself by the Loki familiars and trying to take out the last remnants of the evil ones. And there's just some major stuff that plays out in this volume. A god ends up dying in this volume, and that leads to it being used as a ritual to just create even more mayhem and chaos on an even bigger scale. Basically, an altar is designed, used as a sacrificial place for a god, as I just said. And that's where the attack kind of plays out, where, of course, the Loki familiars and, of course, the Prom has planned out this multi-sort of phase attack where you've got the Xenos attacking from one side, you've got Loki's familiars attacking from another side, and all this fighting is going on, but things just don't plan out the way they had hoped. And this is where things just kind of escalate bit by bit by bit by bit. But it's really cool to see the Xenos working along with the Loki familiars instead of just only working with the Hestia familiars and stuff going on with them. There's other stuff that they're also interacting with the Loki familiars. And I'm interested to see beyond Volume 11 where this goes from the Xeno standpoint. Will we get to see them not just interact with Hestia's familiars more, but also with Loki's familiars more? But I think really the main focus of this volume really comes down to the attack itself on the dungeon with the Xenos, with the Loki familiars, trying to take out the evil ones, things not going to plan, and things ending on a big cliffhanger. Eyes going out, training with Otter to try and get as much extra power, training, experience as possible. And it definitely does help, but again, because she's so much of a higher level, things do slow down. But the fact is that Otter is so much more powerful, it does help out quite a lot. But I'm still interested to see how Freya will respond to this later on in the story and what favor she will call upon Eyes later on. I have a feeling I have an idea, which I will save for a different video, but I definitely think something's going to have a bit of a rippling effect from that. The other thing, though, too, is, again, River God's death and the ritual and everything going on, it really does feel like the Loki familiars have put themselves in a very, very bad situation. And how they end up getting out of this is going to require the Prom to really, I feel like, up his A game. He definitely has that ability to kind of sense danger, but again, just because he can sense danger doesn't mean he can sense what exactly the danger is. It's not like he's got foresight. All he can do is merely just feel out a little bit ahead of him. So it is interesting to see that, yes, he's able to kind of sense it, but he's not able to pinpoint where the issues are, and how he's able to overcome this is going to be very interesting, because I think he's done a lot of growth, particularly in Volume 10 and going into this volume. I was really interested to see his growth in Volume 10, especially where he kind of looks up to Bell and kind of says, you know, Bell is the hero that people need. He wanted to be a hero that kind of brought glory to his people, but now he's more determined now to be a hero much like Bell. He doesn't really care so much about the glory. He's doing what he believes is right to help not just his familiar members, but also the people in general. And if that means working with the Xenos, as much as others don't particularly like that idea, because there's definitely a lot of animosity between them, he is willing to kind of do what's necessary to overall bring greater good to everyone and help everyone out in the end. Because I think at the end of the day, he knows that to defeat the evils, he's going to need the Xenos' helps, and they are best equipped for it because, again, they live in the dungeon, they are born in the dungeon, they understand the dungeon the best. So I'm very interested to see how that plays out in the sort of final major volume arc of the Loki Familiar story. If Eyes ends up going back to Otter for more additional training after all this, but I have a feeling we won't really know, because I think Volume 12 is really going to be unraveling the whole ending package of what's going on with, of course, the evils in the dungeon. Maybe there might be some stuff at the end of it where Eyes ends up going off elsewhere, doing more training, more determined to try and, you know, stay ahead of Bell, or be on that same mindset of training as hard and putting every bit of effort she can into training. But the last thing I do want to talk about before I end the video is, of course, one other death. Of course, I talked about the god's death itself, and not necessarily too much of that except the ritual component, but the rippling effect that it actually had on the familiar members. And one familiar member that very much suffered the most from this was, of course, Filvis. Filvis ended up dying because of it, which then affects Lefia, which, again, I know a lot of people don't like Lefia that are anime-only fans, because the anime and the early stages of the light novels really do make her quite annoying, but over time she's nowhere near being as annoying, and I kind of do have a lot of liking for her, because she's kind of like Belle's tsundere in a sense, where she kind of like is really harsh on Belle in the early stages of the story, but then as time goes on, she becomes a lot more warmed up to Belle's behavior, and I do generally kind of like some aspects about her. I just, again, didn't like the early stages of her, because she got rammed in everyone's face so much in the anime and in the early stages of the light novels. But as I was reading through the light novels, a lot of people in the comment section were like, hey, she's not as annoying, she does get a lot better. And so I generally looked forward to seeing a different side of her, and I grew to like her as the light novels went on, but I never really talked about her much, because I kind of find a lot of the other characters a lot more interesting, but again, that's just my opinion. But the connection that she had with Filvis was very interesting, because they were very much like kindred spirits. You know, they were both elves, they both had a deep connection, they both confided each other, worked together, definitely were a good pair as far as friends go. But to see just how devastating it was on Lefia really does make me feel a lot of sympathy for Lefia. It just, yeah, to see someone that she grew so close to, they both had such a nice connection together, they both kind of grew off of each other and kind of bounced very well again together. I really did feel a lot of sympathy for her, because I really didn't want to see Filvis die, because it was like one character that I really enjoyed, mainly because she gave a bit of lip to Bet, so I was just kind of like, yeah, you go girl. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of Bet, so anytime someone gives Bet a little bit of lip and kind of puts him in his place, it's just kind of fun. But she got a lot of harsh treatment from other people as well, because of her sort of backstory and a lot of the stuff that she was involved in. So I liked learning a lot about her backstory. I kind of wanted to see her go forward in a more positive light, but to see her die in the way she did Oh, that really hit home. It was kind of really sad, and I was just like, oh, that was sad. It was one death that I really, really didn't want to see, but I kind of knew it was coming. I knew ages ago that that death was going to happen sooner or later, only because I saw images from the light novels itself, because I bought them all, and I was kind of spoiling myself looking at all the images, going, oh, look at the pretty little images, and I was like, oh, probably shouldn't have seen that, and just closed the book and was like, yeah, I'm not going to spoil myself anymore. So I kind of knew that was coming, so I spoiled myself on that, so sad nonetheless. But again, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Hit the like button, subscribe for more anime content, and I will see you, beautiful nerds, in the next video.